I feel privileged to extend my warm welcome to all of you in today's webinar on HR practice in post-COVID times on IT industries, organized by SEMS. I, Ritika Kumari, welcome you on the behalf of SEMS Group. Before I proceed, let me take a brief moment for the introduction of my organization. SEMS Welfare Foundation is a non-profit entity established to work in the areas of education, social welfare, women empowerment, skill development, entrepreneurship, and livelihood, etc. SEMS groups have conducted various international conferences, seminars, workshops, and webinars, emerging technologies in various parts of India, and has an active network of 3,000 plus engineers, managers, researchers, etc. DG Saksham is an initiative of SEMS Group which has been developed content over 100 webinars. The topic of today's webinar is HR practice in post-COVID times on IT industries, which is presented by Janani Prakash ma'am. The COVID-19 pandemic threw employers and employees into a great chaos and uncertainty. With no clear end in sight, HR operates in crisis mode much of 2020 and the half of 2021, figuring out how employees could work from home, trying to provide extra mental and physical support. I profusely elated to take the opportunity to introduce our chief guest of the day, Janani Prakash ma'am. She is a global head of human resource for Quantella, a technology prior that offers outcome business model through digitalization of urban infrastructure. She assumed this role in September 2021. Ma'am has more than 16 years of progressive HR leadership experience across the products, services, startup, and consulting organization. She joined Quantella from Deloitte, where she spent close to a decade, serving several technology groups as their HR leader. Ma'am was also featured in Elite Club of Business World HR 40 under 40 list. She has been also recognized with the topmost HR Leader Award India during 30th World HRD Congress 2022. She also holds BA in Engineering from the University of Madras and is a rank holder gold medalist in her post-graduation HR qualification. The world is full of diamonds and gems, and we are having one of them here today to build this event. With this note, I would like to give my heartiest welcome to our guest speaker, Janani Prakash ma'am, with a big round of applause.
Thank you so much, Ritika, for that wonderful and benevolent introduction.
Welcome,
okay. Good afternoon. I think there are also people from other regions, so let me just wish you all a very good day. I hope all of you are doing well and safe at this point of time. I have a very interesting topic in front of me, post-COVID HR practices in IT industry. And I was wondering, are we really in the post-COVID era? As we speak, we have the number of COVID cases increasing in different parts of the world. But maybe we have reached a place where we have learned to live with COVID. So I would want to put it this way, that we are possibly at a time when we have learned to live with COVID. And these practices that I'm talking about, or I would be talking about in the next several minutes, are alluding to this period of time when the present itself is ever changing. With that said, in the next 45 minutes or so, what I will talk about is I will give you a quick industry sneak peek, and then we'll talk about the transitions in work, workplace, and workforce. These have been taking place rapidly in the last 2 years, but where are we right now? The challenges that we all are posed with. What are the big shifts? And then most of the people I hear as part of this session are HR professionals, and the title itself is HR practices, right? So what is the role of an HR professional, and how can we get prepared as HR professionals further to stay ahead and abreast in this whole journey? So that's pretty much what I'm intending to cover. With that said, I was thinking, what's the best way to talk about the drivers of the ever-changing present? And I thought of two people. One is Tej. Tej is an IT professional. He joined the industry about 10 years back. And then he has his best friend. Her name is Shikha. Now, Tej and Shikha were growing together in career. Shikha is a HR professional. Now, when pandemic hit, Tej lost his job, and then he upskilled himself, reskilled himself with one of the tools that are available. And then he secured a job in a very good startup company, which recently became a unicorn. Shikha continued her HR job in an enterprise organization. Now, in the last 2 years, they have also gone through their own personal changes, right? They both were at a marriable age and they got married, and then they have children. So each of them are going through issues in their families that they are dealing with, while they're also going through different scenarios at work and different aspects that are affecting their work. Now, let's talk about Tej for a moment. He is going through information overload at his work. There is also constant technology changes. There are about 14 systems that he is working on, and his organization is adding more and more. But they have all the right intentions to integrate everything. There are some people in his organization that are wanting to work remote only, while some are wanting to work hybrid. And there are some who say, I need to get to office all the time. Of course, he has a fear that if he is on site working at office is how he might actually get promoted. Otherwise, he might not. He might end up losing the opportunity to get promoted. Because of being in a startup, he's also starting to face the heat of the macroeconomic volatility, which otherwise he would have never even known, right? And then he read reports about global big tech regulation. There are fines levied by some countries because of the regulatory rules. And then amidst all this, so much of transformation happening digitally. Now, he is really concerned, feeling overwhelmed. He goes to his friend Shikha over the weekend and they both are having a conversation. Now, Shikha is in HR profession, right? And if we move to the next slide, what is Shikha going through is what you will see here. Shikha is actually thinking about, Shikha talks about the great resignation that her peers are fighting about, talking about on a constant basis. And then there is a lot of push about several varieties of transformation. There is people transformation, there is business model transformation, and there is also this digital transformation that's happening simultaneously. When this is all going on, there is this global talent shortage, which is hitting them severely because there is an impact in terms of how they are hiring people, their ability to retain people, and overall, despite of having a very good brand, her organization is considering about the EVP reassessment. Amidst all this, employee well-being is taking a very high view in their leadership's lens, because if people are healthy and if they're having overall well-being, then they seem to be more productive is the result that they have come to. They've also read through about the fact that connected employees are 75 times more engaged than the ones that are not. Therefore, there is pressure on Shikha to see how she can keep people connected. Now, one of the common aspects that both Shikha and Tej are battling off in both their varieties of organizations is about the cost consciousness, because they are constantly asked to optimize, they are asked to reduce cost and improve efficiency. Now, what I spoke about and why did I take two different characters? I just felt we are at a time when the macroeconomic changes or the macro changes that are happening in the world are affecting at a micro level. It's affecting each one of us like never before. And Shikha and Tej are two people like you and me who are working in the industry and are getting affected with all of these things that are taking place out there, right? And if we think we are apart from all of this, the answer is no. They are all interconnected and they have an impact on us. Participants, here is another interesting question. This company gave a week off for all the employees globally. This happened very recently. Which company is that? LinkedIn just did this recently, and then it was all over LinkedIn that they gave. Okay. But this again is a trend of what's happening in the market and how industry is looking at enhancing the well-being of their people, right? So moving on. Now, I want to talk about a specific incident that happened some time back in a hospital. Here is a hospital where the number of COVID cases that were coming in were just way too many. Obviously, there were number of nurses and doctors and so many number of staff only, but the number of COVID cases that were coming in were just way too many. Obviously, some of them were unmet. The patients were not being seen immediately, and therefore that led to frustration for few patients. Now, so the nurses were constantly overwhelmed, and what this did was they were feeling overworked, and then they were also not feeling efficient. And despite of working for several hours, they felt they were not productive enough to cater to the need that was in front of them. So the hospital management took a very distant look about whatever was going on, right? So they just took a step back and then they viewed the situation. They took every nurse's job description and then they broke it into how every step is taking place when a patient actually enters to the time the patient is getting admitted and then gets recovered and leaves. Now, what they found is the nurses spent several hours just talking to the patients that are coming in, making note of their fundamental basic details, which actually did not require nursing skills. So they thought some part of this work could actually be done by people who are not qualified nurses or doctors. It could be done by people like the receptionist, or they could add some part-time staff to make sure that part of the work is taken care of. And they did this. So what did they do? They took a nurse's job description. They said, okay, this job description is having several things, but then whatever is not aligned to the core competency of the nurse, let's just carve them out and give it to someone else who is able to do that job and need not have medical qualification at all. And by doing this, they actually changed the way they could service the patients that came in. And they did a fantastic job of this. Now, if you look at this case study, look at what have they done. They just took the entire concept of job description aside, and then they broke it into chunks of work. So the question is boiling down to what is work itself. And then in order to perform the work, what are the skills and competencies that are required? And what is needed to get it done efficiently? Is it creativity? Is it collaboration, or both? Who should be doing the work? Like, let's say in the same case study that I was alluding to, if this is a specific period when there are peaks, then they could probably do only part-timers, do this with part-timers. If this is like a continuous scenario, then they will have to increase their full-timers, right? What's the ecosystem that's required? Maybe all the COVID patients need not be in a place where nurses are also there and you have other varieties of workers who are catering to them, right? It could be in a different ecosystem. So what's the ecosystem that's required? How can the organization cater to them? Now, what are the workplace requirements to do the work? What are the technology and collaboration tools needed? How humanistic is the workplace? In the same case, if I want to take it, do they need to use pen and paper, or do they need to take an app and then fill out things, right? So I think it's just about taking a very different look of what needs to be done and keeping work at the center stage than thinking about who is doing the work and where it has to be done. That's the change the industry is going through. With that said, what are the challenges that all of us are posed with? Now, there are several numbers in this presentation that you will see. I just want to tell that they're all from very credible sources like Gartner, People Matters. There's a PEGA report that I went through, Oracle SHRM report, and HBR, and several such. Okay, these are all credible sources. So one of the reports call out that 42% of all varieties of workers actually feel that the digital transformation has made their jobs much more complex. There is also this internal processes that organizations have and bureaucracy that has been built for several years in many organizations. right? Now, amidst all of these changes that people are going through, they're also thinking, I need to navigate through all of this to get my job done. So it's just a little work that I'm actually getting done, but more of managing the other aspects. Then managing teams, projects, people, keeping pace with rapid change. There is constant fear of, okay, I'm doing this, what if it's not relevant tomorrow? And there are also people who are struggling with lack of resources to get the job done. Interestingly, I was going through one of these surveys which said a lot of millennials and younger generation are willing to quit their current jobs if their organizations are not able to provide technology support, like how they're getting it externally. Let's say when they're going through social media like Facebook or Twitter, whatever experience they get, they're expecting similar experiences in their organizations from a technology standpoint, right? Otherwise, they're willing to even choose to quit their jobs. That's just a small data point that I thought I can provide for this particular statement of lack of resources to get the job done. And then work-life balance definitely is taking a toll if we are not organized and structured ourselves. And then if our organization is also not setting up a conducive environment for the same. Now look at technology. It is certainly easing our lives, but then it's adding a lot of complexity. There is a lot of work happening in silos. I was talking to someone on the other day from a different organization, and he was saying that their organization is currently having 16 different systems, and then they are just trying to bring together all of them through a low code or no code platform. Now, that is also a massive movement, isn't it? But they're willing to do it because all of these are occurring in silos, and people are going through a constant struggle to even understand what tech changes are taking place. So it's just perceived to be too complicated to learn and use. Across many systems, it also makes their job more complicated. Forget about IT for a moment. There is this non-IT professionals who are who are working on the field, right? They could be in hospitals, or they could be civil engineers, or they could be in any other profession that's not warranting them to sit in front of their laptops or systems. Now, for them, it's certainly an overhead to learn whatever that tool is and then still manage it, isn't it? So with all of this set as a context, what are some of the big shifts that are happening in the industry? Number one is the hyper-personalized employee experience. Now, I want to talk about two specific examples here. Some of these are non-tech examples, but let me tell you, it's not about an IT industry or non-IT industry. Every organization is becoming equally tech savvy because for tech has become like bread and butter. If your organization is able to cope up with technology, then you survive. Otherwise, you don't. That's become the state, right? So anyway, what you will see in the next few slides are some industry examples. They may be from IT or non-IT industry, and then I will also add some of my own experience as part of this. Now, the hyper-personalized employee experience, and I found this picture also very interesting and hence added this. Initially, if you see, the industry was like, okay, I'm doing a product and I'm just going to sell it, right? I'm not worried about who the customer is. Then they segregated the customers because they felt, okay, there has to be sale. My bottom line has to improve. My revenue has to show up. So they segregated as offer A, offer B, offer C. Then they said, no. Now I'm going to cater to varieties of customers that are there for me. And each one may have some needs. So how can I personalize it to their needs? Now, this is what is the indication that's showing up in the right side of the picture. Why is this important in our context? Customer experience, right? Customer experience is directly having an impact basis how our employee experience is. So employee experience is really a very critical aspect that we need to keep under our radar. So what is it? Human touch and individualization. That's the first point. Air Asia in Berhad location, when they were having to furlough people, what they did was they went ahead and found outplacement services through job fairs. They also licensed with governments, and they made sure they are able to get people some job opportunities. And if they were not able to also, they've continued to stay in touch with these people to make sure when times are good, they're able to get their people back. So Ultimately, there was some level of deep personalization and connect that everybody experienced despite of tumultuous times that the organization went through. Titan went one step ahead and started reaching out to their customers through Google Meet and other apps to stay in touch with their customers. Now, I want to talk about a very important factor that otherwise we don't tend to pay attention to. A lot of HR professionals think, okay, I need to think about employee experience only. But I just said employee experience has a direct proportion to how the customer experiences. Now, both of these are important, but why? Why is it important? Anybody who wants to respond to this in the chat box, why is employee experience important and why is customer experience important? And what does this have to do for the CEO of the organization? Okay, it has a direct impact on the shareholder value. That's the reason why we need to focus on employee experience and customer experience. So if you're working on something that seemingly looks intangible for the moment, it actually has tangible results. So if you look at artificial intelligence, this has been an area that's constantly changing our lives, the HR professionals' lives for the last several years. Now, why is it changing? Because it has the ability to have deep learning. And because of deep learning, it also has the ability to personalize. A couple of years back in my previous organization, as part of learning, right? Imagine today when you're just browsing your Facebook and you see an advertisement there, you just enter into it. Few minutes later, when you again get into Facebook, you get 3 such advertisements because it's actually studying the customer and then giving the recommendations, right? Each one of us on this call would have gone through something like this. So imagine if your organization is able to create a learning system which gives you a feed of these 4 learnings could actually be useful for you basis your browsing pattern. And it will be even more wonderful if it's connected to your performance management feedback, which says these are 3 areas that you need to focus on for the coming year. And if all of these are combined together, imagine how wonderful it will be for an employee to get that personalized experience, isn't it? So that's what AI and technology are doing. Technologies of various natures, right? Like be it data analytics or other varieties of technologies that involve making our jobs easy. Now, moving forward, technociency. Now, this is an interesting word. Technology plus proficiency is technociency. So this is another big shift. Digital mindset is critical, and companies like Dabur, which is again not in a technology space, has actually hired a chief digital officer. While this is happening, a lot of companies are having HR professionals having AR, VR being used in the onboarding and pre-onboarding phase, or even during the recruitment phase, to recreate the experience of being live in the office. There is also this automation to augmentation. Many years back, we just used to say, okay, let's automate this piece of work so that it's happening on its own. But right now, it's not like that. It's like another person sitting next to us and augmenting a piece of work along with a human being sitting next to us, right? Let's say there is this part of the work which gets done through a chat bot that's live and active, and we give her a name called Evols, isn't it? So that's actually augmenting some piece of work. But what if the chatbot does not have an answer for some of the questions that are coming in, or it requires some level of human intelligence? Then it comes to the human beings. But basically, by doing this, we're actually elevating the work that's being done by human beings, and the lower level jobs or repeated varieties of jobs are being performed by the chatbot. Now, I want to just take a pause and ask you to use the chat box right now and tell me, where do you experience this shift or want to implement this? You have heard 2 of these shifts right now. Very well said, Victoria, very true. And there are a lot of case studies that I came across as I was preparing for this session. One piece on happiness was coming out. So the last year was a lot about well-being only, but this year there is a lot of chatter about happiness for people. Another aspect is about thinking of hiring people that are having near skills or seemingly unrelated skills, but having some skills that will potentially have an opportunity to be used in the new job, but you train them in the core job itself. And I recall a case study that happened in Citigroup, Hong Kong, I guess. So when the airline industry actually had to lay off several people when COVID happened, Citigroup had these finance professionals who were from different countries. They had to go back to their hometowns or like home countries. Now, these were finance professionals with a combination of excellent relationship skills. So they just Citigroup felt that there is an opportunity for them to look at some of these people from the airline industry who actually who are very good when it comes to relationship skills, right? And hospitality. So they just took them and then trained them in basic finance skills. Look at it. Nobody could have imagined this kind of cross training, isn't it? They almost did about 1,000 people. They trained about 1,000 people, and this had an impact on their business. They had like 8% up in their overall revenue and 11% up in their card sales, several such positive numbers. So I think we just have to be open in terms of identifying what are those avenues and experimenting with those. Okay, I see Marine's response as Oracle. Possibly there is an opportunity there. Okay, let's move on. The last few years, when I just recall about 5 years back, I don't think we were thinking about well-being as a topic at all. But then 3 to 4 years back, we slowly started thinking about well-being. And last year and the previous year were like the peak times when we were thinking of well-being, because health was fundamental for people to perform their jobs. Slowly, while it started as physical, it also extended to emotional and psychological well-being, and then to spiritual well-being. Now we are thinking about total well-being. And the biggest shift that's happening in the industry is many organizations are having EAPs. The Employee Assistance Program has just been institutionalized in most organizations, I must say. There are also organizations like Wipro, which are trying to do leadership trainings on virtual empathy, because you're going to have people all around the world. Technology is also shifting the needle, right? Experience is making custom-made well-being journey. Predictive well-being is another topic. Few years back, I came across this article. In fact, I think I also wrote one on having wearables, and then basis the wearables, if a signal goes to your doctor, how do you, the doctor is going to tell you that, hey, I think your BP is shooting up, and you're not even aware of it. So how wonderful will that be? But that is actually becoming mainstream right now. So total well-being is also encompassing something called predictive well-being. The heliotropic culture. This is a very interesting one. And when I came across this one, I was thinking of, what does this word even mean? Heliotropic, right? And then I remembered, yes, as a child, I came across this topic of when all the plants are actually getting attracted or moving towards the sun, that phenomena is called as heliotropy, and it's in biology. Now, what is this heliotropic culture all about? So in a culture, there is always, in a group of people, there are always positives. And there are always things that we can accomplish among ourselves or with each other. So it's about our ability to view those positives and possibilities and creating new opportunities. That's heliotropic culture. And the picture also shows you that, okay, there are some possibilities and some people are coming together for that particular reason. Now, why is this relevant in our current scenario, and given all the context that I have just said? Adapting to remote and hybrid models. Now, all of us are aware that in the industry, if people are looking out, they have 2 to 3 offers. And we have a very significant disproportionate gap between the supply and demand. If that's what it is, then the buy model is not going to help with respect to talent attraction at all. Just the buy model is not going to help. Yes, we may need some experts and we may need to hire, but what's going to be our build model? Is there a marketplace that we are completely missing out by constantly going out for talent and hiring? It's a question that we need to ask. And I think many CHROs and CEOs are asking this question. And therefore, the biggest phenomena that's emerging is creating an internal marketplace. And there is gig workforce exploration, not just externally, but also internally. Another aspect is last couple of years have taught us that HR professionals need not constantly think of, are my people motivated? Or are they inspired? Should I be motivating them, right? Maybe that was our role 2 years before. But 2 years have actually proven to us that people are motivated enough or they learn to motivate themselves. Or motivation is actually intrinsic and it happens from within. If that's what it is, all we need to enable is autonomy and empowerment. So, how is our organization structured today? What are our spans and layers looking like? And how do we modify them to enable enough autonomy, right? And then build this as part of our culture. I think that's another key theme that's emerging. Number 3 is new talent assimilation into a virtual culture. Last year or so, I was talking to someone, and this person said, "Hey, I had this COVID time new hire in my team. He came in and he left. Nobody has ever seen him. He got the laptop and then he delivered the laptop. So it's like he never came to office also, right? During the first peak, he joined. During the second peak, he left. We have several people like that. And many of us also could be like that because there was no opportunity for us to build a sense of connectedness with the organization beyond the laptop that probably the organization gave us. And in some cases, the organization said, you buy your own laptop and we'll reimburse. So that sense of connect was also not built, saying, I have this one particular aspect of the organization with me. That's also not there. So while a lot of work got done, a lot of productivity improvement and all happened, it's about how do we build culture in a virtual environment? How do we build that sense of connectedness? And that's also leading to the next point here, saying humanizing connectedness, right? But before coming to this, I did talk about AR, VR, and how we are using VR sets to ensure people are able to actually experience the recruitment with people in the room of sorts, right? Or like how do they get an opportunity to see the workplace through VR? I think that's an important change shift that's happening in the industry. Let's move forward to the fifth big shift: humanizing connectedness. Now, I did speak about the emotional connectedness, beliefs and value systems. I think that's an important shift that we need to think of as we move forward, right? Organizations are thinking about how do we make sure there are beliefs and values that the organization stands for that's permeating downwards. Then how do we make sure there is a social fabric that's built in, like collaboration platforms are there across geographies. And then there is happiness campaigns. I was talking about the happiness as a focus in one of the previous slides, but then that's another trend that's emerging very heavily. Adaptation to transformation. The last 2 years have been adaptation, but this year is all about transformation. I think I already spoke about transformation earlier. Every organization is going through digital transformation or organizational business model transformation, or one or the other varieties, right? So I think we're all right there experiencing transformation in one or the other way. Moving on, I'll just maybe quickly breeze through other industry practices that I've come across, and there could be several more. Unlimited leave policy, mental well-being as a specific focus, earned wage access adoption. In fact, as we speak in my organization, I'm exploring this. Shorter work week, week-long holiday, we saw about LinkedIn doing that. Hobby reimbursement for holistic well-being. ESG is becoming mainstream now. Increased pre-onboarding engagement. Many people that are HR professionals here could relate to this because we have high levels of decline. I think over 35% of decline is what we are seeing in the industry right now. Shortening up the notice periods is heavily in the discussions right now. All the way from 15 days to 1 month is what is being discussed, but then industry is starting at 2 to 3 months in India, while few Middle East countries are like 1 month and Americas are at 15 days. So we should see where this goes. Provident Fund in India is under consideration for gig workers. This will be a very welcome move if it works out for the gig workers. And then there are also considerations about shorter weeks, but then you still do 48 hours across 4, 5, or 6 days. This is also under discussion. Moving on, and I'm being very cognizant of the time, we can move on. So I just thought as we do this, right, like if we can move on, please. I was thinking of what is the role of a HR professional and what were some of the predictions that came up 2 years ago when COVID just came and everything got accelerated. If you could please move to the next slide. Harvard Business Review actually came up with 21 HR jobs of the future. And this is all these jobs are related to the technology centricity. Plus, there is this human resources core job. It's like a combination of both of these. Now, I'll probably keep my focus to the red and pink ones only because these are between 2020 and 2025. And you see HR data detective, algorithm bias auditor, work from home facilitator, human bias officer, strategic HR business continuity director. I must say some of these are slowly emerging in different forms or shapes in the industry already. So watch out for this article. Please read, see what you can do to make sure you're able to study or upskill, reskill yourself. And while this was happening, if you could move to the next slide, Josh Bersin came up with a T-shaped career framework. And this T-shaped career framework spoke about you having to develop broad skills across multiple areas, but then deepen in one particular area. He did not give this particular framework. AI HR later developed this, saying if you are a HR professional, probably you should have data-driven business acumen, digital integration, and being a people's advocate as your broad generalized skills, while it could be acquisition, development, advisory, whatever it is, as your single functional competency where you can go deeper. And that forms your T-shaped career opportunity, right? So I just thought I should bring this to you to say, okay, what is it that you are doing about the top 4? I don't think many of us are really data-driven or we are digital savvies to have digital integration. Now, this is a very interesting view. And the next 3 slides as such are talking about how HR roles have been transforming along with how the industry is transforming as well. Like pre-pandemic, in-office was very high to now in-office and remote work are like combination, right? If you could see the key CXO roles, there was the CIO role that was big, and then there was a CHRO role. The COO came into picture very heavily in 2020 and 21, because operations were starting to happen from different parts of the geography. And then moving to the current scenario, there is CIO, CHRO, and COO in varying proportions, not meaning to say the CIO role has got limited, but that role has actually got impermeated into the CHRO and COO role. Everything is tech-enabled, isn't it? But one thing I want you to see is the CHRO's role is slowly becoming larger, and therefore HR professionals, we need to make note of this. And with this as the context, if you see the next couple of slides, I want to just say that earlier we might have looked at careers. Please move forward. If you look at careers, right, or if you look at an average employee, we would have looked at, okay, how does this employee join us? What's going to be the career journey, and what's like the termination like? It completes the employee life cycle. But then look at this image, and I would urge you all to go check out this person called Dion Hinchcliffe. He's done a lot of work on digital employee experience. So here we are talking about devices, apps, data, along with the employee or the worker. And we have stopped calling people as employees anyway, because we have varieties of workers working from different places, integrated with culture, operations, and process, right? So much is what a worker is, we will need to think of a worker. And imagine if you're going to draw out a career path for a worker like this. In the next slide, it talks about several milestones that an employee or a worker will have to have a holistic career journey while in remote, while at office, but keeping integrated with several technologies, cloud technology or the security, the data access that the individual has, whatever ops or AI related aspects that the individual is actually working on. It's just so many things that we will need to think of as we prepare ourselves to this journey. If you move forward, there are these HR trends that I wanted to spend time on, but I'm being very cognizant that we have only about 3 to 4 minutes. One thing that I'll probably want to call out here is HR as an activist. This particular topic stayed with me because it's like for several years we have said, okay, this is my duty. I'll have to notify this to the CEO, and I will make sure that I'm telling this to the CEO or the CFO or whoever that is. But right now, if DEI is an issue in the organization, we are asked to act, not being as a trade union leader, but just act on certain things that we think has to be right. I thought I should just touch upon this. And another aspect is belonging has joined the DEI bandwagon. So I would urge all the HR professionals here or any profession that you are in, but you're listening to this, I would just say, take ownership of your learning. There is a lot of place that we need to unlearn and then relearn, but there are a few tips that are here in terms of what you can do to stay curious and learn. And I would want to say that read like a nomad, and I do this. I just read whatever I'm getting, but then at a later point of time, I just sit back and then everything makes sense to me collectively. And it, in fact, helps me to put things together for sessions like this. The last slide, I'm just bringing everything together. We are at a tipping point of changes. Innovation is the new currency. Well-being of HR is self-responsibility, because I think we will have to take care of ourselves. DEIB is the collective responsibility. Hybrid is the new normal. Lives are integrated with digital. Learning is an everyday business for everyone. I want to close this saying, if you are not progressing, you're regressing. There's nothing called status quo. With this said, what are the 2 things you will learn about after this webinar? Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was really very informative and incredible session. Now we have some participant with some inquiry regarding the same on their behalf. I would like to ask some questions, and the questions are: HR of future should be tech native or just tech aware? According to Josh Burson, what are your views on this, ma'am?
I think it's a tricky question because we are amidst a time when there are tech natives and tech aware people, and people that are not aware of tech as well, right? I think we should strive to become tech native. So we are at least aware, and we are also able to be very comfortable talking about tech and dealing with tech. That's my response.
Thank you, ma'am, for answering it. Thank you so much, ma'am, for making our doubt clear. The webinar was really very amazing. I would like to propose heartiest vote of thanks to you, ma'am, for gracing today's webinar. Your presence and wise word helps to magnify our cause in the best possible way. I hope all the participants learn a lot with this webinar. I would really like to thank you, ma'am, for giving us your valuable time, and I'm delighted to be the part of today's webinar. A good event never ends in the world. They take only a pause and keep us awaiting for the next. All good things eventually end. I consider everyone as fortunate that they become a part of this webinar, which was full of knowledge, which makes difficult to say us goodbye. The end of one chapter is the beginning of next. Keep on reading, the best is yet to come. I, Ritika, your host for the day, sign off on a cheerful note. Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.